y'all. What's up? Your girl Ashley L here with I'm the Mama podcast. So excited for you to be joining me today as we are always discussing the ins, the outs, and everything in between of being a mom. Now, today I have a topic that is very near and dear, and I'm going to emphasize on near right now because I'm still kind of going through it right now. But it touches me, and a little bit still emotional about it. So I can't wait to talk about it. But first and foremost, I got to give my shout out. So my very first shout out I want to give is to my girl Kanisha. Y'all, she stays slaying my hair, slaying my braids. And when I tell you, like, she got me doing color now, making me feel good, trying out new things. It's about to be fall. And so we tried out this auburn color, and I am loving every bit of it. So thank you, boo, for staying on top of beautifying me at all times. I will say braids have been my go-to throughout pregnancy and with my son being here because it's so convenient. Like, I don't have to worry about my hair and everything. I don't think I've worn braids this much, but I'm so appreciative to be able to do so. And again, just feel good about it and look good as well. So thank you, Kanisha. And then in addition to that, I want to give a shout out to my body. All right. And I know you're probably like, your body, what do you mean? So I would say since becoming a mom, since becoming pregnant, before even becoming a mom, since becoming pregnant, she's gone through so many changes. And I will say throughout all of the different changes that she's taken on, she continues to keep it together for me, despite how I may feel at times. I try to keep, optimistic mindset, a positive mindset. But sometimes, you kind of beat up on yourself, start working out, stop working out, oh man, look at this. You had a baby, you carried life, and so I try to give myself grace. Now, definitely really paying more attention to giving myself grace and understanding what took place and why the changes took place for my body. So thank you, body, for just always just being there and just keeping it together for me. And so that leads into today's topic. I actually entitled it Let It Flow. And this is where we're going to be discussing nursing, whether it be direct nursing that you were doing or whether it is pumping that you were doing. Again, just allowing your milk to continue to produce for your little one. And so I also plan to discuss within today's episode, the good of nursing, the challenging, because y'all know I don't ever say bad. So the challenging of nursing that I encountered, as well as the sad, it is very emotional. And I didn't really recognize how much emotion was going to come with it from the beginning phases of trying to learn how to nurse through the process of, oh goodness, we nurse them for 30, 40 minutes, bruh. And then, at the very end, like, all right, you're weaning, I'm weaning you, and we're going to have to end this process. So it is a lot more emotional than I was expecting it to be. I thought it was going to be hey, I'm doing this, go ahead, get on that breast. Let's do it. And I don't know about y'all, but it wasn't that process for me, especially in the beginning. But before I go into my experience when it came to nursing, first, I have to give some facts. And so I looked at the CDC just to kind of see some stats that they have when it comes to nursing and breastfeeding. And so currently right now, this is for 2021. They don't have any recent because we're still in the midst of 2022 right now. But 83% of infants are breastfed, all right, in the year of 2021. 83%, all right? Now, by 6 months, it drops down to 55%. Okay. And then at 1 year, it drops down even lower to 35%. So I know the biggest thing that the nurses continued and his pediatrician, they were shooting to aim for 6 months. And so that makes sense as far as that change between 55 at 6 months to 35 at 1 year, because it's like, okay, you've gotten enough. so we can stop this thing now. So that's understandable. But again, just wanted to kind of point out the picture because I do understand that every situation is different. And this particular episode is not here to discredit anyone who did not continue the journey or who was not able to breastfeed. That's not what this is here for. But this is discussing my particular experience when it came to it, just to relate with, other mothers who have gone through that journey. I know some that are, able to nurse until 4, till their babies are 4. They want to do it until their baby's older. To each his own. And again, no shame to anyone who didn't do it or wasn't able to. But again, this is just my particular journey. And so I want to start off kind of discussing my initial experience. And so again, anyone who's been tuning in to all my episodes, I started off having the cesarean, which was unexpected. And so initially when you have a cesarean, your body doesn't trigger the labor. Right. So it doesn't know to start producing that flow of milk for you as it would when you actually go through the labor process. Your body triggers different things to let it know, okay, we need to start producing milk. We're starting to, create this baby. We're about to push it through. And it's just amazing how our bodies work and how it talks to each other and signals the next thing that needs to take place. And so anyways, when going through the cesarean, again, it took longer for my body to recognize, okay, she just had a baby. And so what we had to do is, of course, in the hospital, they continuously wanted me as much as possible to put him on direct and to allow him to nurse, because what it was doing is, again, triggering my body of, okay, the baby's here. We have to start creating some milk at this time. So that's what I did. I put him on as much as I could, as often as I could. But then in the midst of that, we did have to provide him formula. And so within the midst of that, they taught us a way to still simulate nursing as far as the flow, but through formula. And so what we had to do is we had to take a syringe with a nursing tube, with a feeding tube. And y'all, the feeding tube was like this big, or should I say this small? And so you put the syringe and then the nursing or the feeding tube at the bottom, and you have to slowly provide the formula. Very slowly, what this is causing him to do. And you put the tube on his cheek and it causes him to suck. Right. So in the times where he wasn't getting milk from me, he still was practicing through the formula and through this feeding tube, which was so amazing. Because when you think about it, we even had to put our pinky in his mouth with the nursing or with the feeding tube, again, just to simulate like the nipple and things like that. It was so amazing. And how he quickly caught on to that, but then understanding why we had to go through those steps. Because let's just say it wasn't quick. It wasn't like, hey, get on real quick, what you need, get it done. No, again, putting 2.5 ounces in a syringe and slowly, very slowly pushing it through just to allow him to technically experience the nursing process as we were trying to get him prepared to do the same on me. And so we get home still having to implement the same thing, still trying to get him or get my milk to produce as much as possible. And then it started to flow a little bit. I noticed a change within my breast, like, oh, okay, it's starting to come out now. Okay, I see it. It was very emotional when I first saw first little bit of my milk coming out, even in the hospital where they were pushing them together, showing me like, mama, keep going. You see, you got this little bit of milk. This is all he need. He need this little bit here. And I'm like, what? That was just a drop. But again, the encouragement was necessary. And so again, we get home, we're feeding him through the syringe. I'm nursing him. I'm utilizing the breast pump, having to do what's called the power hours, where you're sitting there pumping for literally an hour, 20 minutes on, 10 minutes off, for a full hour, multiple times a day, just to get this milk flowing like it needs to. But let's just say man, consistency is key, right? If you stay the course, if you stay being consistent and you stay positive, try not to stress about it, it will happen. And so that's exactly what happened for me. Despite the long process, it started to flow. And I was so excited, again, when pumping, the little bit of milk that I would get, we would feed him through the syringe first before giving him formula. And then eventually, again, it started coming more and more and more. I would say it took maybe almost up to a full week of that process before it really just started kind of flowing on its own. But even though when it started flowing, the next thing I had to get comfortable with is the adjustment of positioning him. Because again, had a cesarean, couldn't really do the cross really well because again, my incision and things like that were still healing. And so I ended up having to learn the football pose with him. And that was the best thing for me as far as positions. But I did have to end up going a further step outside of the lactation specialist in the hospital. I did end up having to go to a local hospital lactation specialist as well because I became very overwhelmed. I wanted the process I expected it to go a lot quicker than what it did, and I wasn't comfortable. And so this particular lactation specialist, she spent an hour with me. We were practicing different positions while our son was right there with me, and she was helping me get more comfortable, figuring out which positions work best for me and how to really get him to latch on correctly. And so that one session alone, taking the time out to do that was what I needed, because from that moment forward, I just kept implementing that position as well as making sure he was latching on correctly. And then the journey really started of breastfeeding for us. So very grateful for it. But again, was very overwhelming as well as I would say challenging at times because, these things get sore, especially when they're learning how to do it. And again, I wasn't really positioning him correctly at first. Man, them things hurt. I don't want you to look at them. I don't want you to touch them. I don't want you to even talk about them. Wearing bras, like everything was just painful. And I was just like, oh, I don't know if I could do this because I was not prepared for the pain that was coming. And those little balms that they give you, those ointments, the little cooling pads, nothing really helped the pain other than continuing the process and just really making sure that we were doing it correctly. All right. So anyways, biggest call out there is just making sure to stay the course. If this is something that you want to do, just making sure to stay the course. In the beginning, it may not be easy, but if you stay focused, stay diligent, stay consistent, stay the course. Again, my favorite word is consistency. Consistency. If you keep it up, it will end up turning out fine for you. I think so many times we just get busy with all the other things that we have to do. And this does take a lot of time. Like I mentioned, the power hours, I was having to pump 8 times a day. It takes a lot of time, along with all the other things that you're probably trying to do and heal. But if it is something that you really want to do, again, I just encourage you to stay consistent and make it happen. All right. And so, those sleepless nights, the pain, the bruising, the soreness, the bloody nipples and things like that, day in, day out of repetitiveness, whether you do breastfeeding or pumping or both, like myself, it'll be worth it in the end. All right. And so now, again, me and him got our flow. We're getting our bonding time. We're doing it now. We're making things happen. And so then it became a moment of peace for me. Like when it came to nursing, that was our moment of peace and comfort with each other for the both of us. Like if he was crying, I love the fact that I could just, soothe him by nursing him, and he'd become so calm. It calmed me as well. Like, again, it became a very vital bonding moment for the both of us. And so, again, to me, it was just our precious time together. And so it became an enjoyable thing. And so as time progressed, he ended up going to about 5 to 6 typical nursings a day was his routine. And so again, they came every 2.5 hours, sometimes 3, but I was ready for it. I was, excited to be able to do it. I would have some soothing music playing, or I would sing to him during that time, or I would talk to him, rub his little hands and things like that. But again, just really creating that bond between us that ended up continuing all the way till he was 14 months. All right. Well, I really say 16 months because again, I'm just now getting out of the phase, which we'll talk about here in just a minute. But again, that beautiful time of us, it's a priceless moment. It's a moment that I looked forward to. It's a moment that I will always cherish that we had, because now, he's getting older and doing more and wanting to be Mr. Independent. And so even during those times, as I started noticing that, he would still need mommy to comfort him at times, or look forward to nursing before going to bed, where we're just relaxing together before a peaceful night of sleep. And so in addition to the pumping, because I continued to pump. I end up having to obviously go back to work. And so what I would do is, out of those 5 to 6 nursings or meals that he got a day, 3 of those were at least pumping when I started back working. And then the rest of them was, again, that direct contact together. And so what I would do is also try to do a little extra and store my milk, because, if he's going to someone's house, then he needed some milk where I wouldn't be able to be there. Or, if I was ever to get sick or something, then again, he needs that milk to be there. So I started to kind of double up the process, like, okay, this thing is going now. And let me say, amongst that, with the flow just kind of coming quicker, then again, I was able to store some extra. So again, if you're not, then fine, no problem. But it was just something in me that wanted to make sure, and even his pediatrician wanted to make sure he had some stored. Now, I will say I probably went overboard. I'll admit that, because he had 3 racks 3 racks in the freezer of stored milk. So he didn't need that much. I will honestly say he didn't need that much. But again, it's like, I'm not going to waste it. This is liquid gold. I'm not wasting this. This is going in the freezer. And so that's just what it was. He had literally 3 racks of milk as a backup, but due to, again, pandemic and everything else, he really didn't get out as much. And so most of the time it was what I pumped for that day, as well as what I provided him directly. So again, when it came to work, it did make it a little bit simpler, because, sometimes like his nursings would be 5 minutes all the way up to 40 minutes. You never really know what it's going to be for that day. And so, or for that particular period. And so, again, it did feel good to be able to be at work and just pumping, even though I work from home, being able to pump and just be like, okay, here's his bottle of milk, instead of him controlling the time frame there. So it did give me a little bit of break, which I think was good to be able to balance, because when coming back to work, trying to focus on work and things like that, I couldn't just step away each and every time for that. And so, in addition to that, I had to put in time, because with my job, we do a lot of virtuals and things like that, where our cameras have to be on. And so I had to do a lot of adjustments on my schedule. I had to actually place it on my schedule, whether I was going to pump or nurse. I had to put that time in, and I had to make sure that when that time came, at that minute, I'm ready to go. And when it's done, take everything off, And hopefully, my parents or our caregiver or the nanny, somebody would come and just get the bottle and everything together for me. That's how I had to plan my day. And so again, on my schedule, I had 3 different nursings for my work schedule, but I did have to plan it, and I did have to let my management know so that they understood, like, why is Ashley taking off every 20 minutes or 3 times a day for 20 minutes? So I had to make them aware. I will make sure that if this is something that you're going to be doing, that you feel comfortable with being honest with, if you are working, being honest with your management, just to let them know it's not them being in your business, but it is giving that full transparency, as I'm not just out here willy-nilly just stepping away. Like, no, I'm handling business. I'm actually here still working. It's just I'm not going to be available to be on a call or be able to share my screen at that time and things like that. So I was pretty comfortable with talking to management about it. I didn't have any problem. And fortunately, they made me feel comfortable during that process as well, which I'm very appreciative of. And so, again, I end up storing just a lot of different milk. And technically, it says that you can store your milk or use your stored milk, your frozen milk, anywhere between 9 and 12 months. All right. That's how long it's supposed to be good for. And so again, being that we didn't really use it much, it became a time where we were getting close to that year. And I'm like, we got all this stored milk. We're not about to waste this. So what do we end up doing? It was a period where we just gave him bottles, thawed out that milk, gave him bottles for, I think it ended up taking almost 2 months to utilize all of that milk. But during that process, I did continue to pump because I knew after he finished drinking that milk, I still wanted him to receive breast milk. And so what I was doing is I was still pumping multiple times a day and just storing new milk in the freezer as well. Still end up being 3 rats. It's all good though. I'm not mad about it. But again, we had to use it. And so during that time, one thing I did notice when it came to the frozen milk, though, I think because he was so used to fresh milk, he wouldn't really drink it all unless if he was just super hungry or super thirsty, because obviously we end up incorporating food. So it became like, it was still nutrients for him, but not the same. So it became like, instead of water, it was his juice. It was his beverage to go along with his meal. And one thing I noticed is when it was frozen, he just didn't enjoy it the same way. And so that's one thing that was a little interesting to me, because it's like, if we're storing it, I'm not ashamed to say I taste it myself, and it does taste different when it's frozen and thawed out than when it does fresh. So I understand why he was doing that, but at the same time, again, we just had to get it out of there. But after going through this process of replenishing, because I'm like, oh, well, he's still doing real good with nursing, so replenishing this stash. How about this one decides to wean himself from 5 nursings a day to 3. On his own. So he weaned out 2 of the middays. And I was like, okay, cool. Because again, they say, you have to give your body time to adjust to any new schedules. So once he stopped, I just kind of stopped pumping during that time for work, which allowed me more free time to do other things that I needed to do for work or have that visibility if needed. So yeah, now he's on 3 nursings a day. He has his morning when he first wakes up, he has his midday, and then he had night. And so that was a big reliever. I was like, oh yeah, this is working fine. These 3 are good. But I was just so surprised because it seemed very immediate that he just kind of weaned himself off. And I'm like, okay, this could be nice. Go ahead, wean yourself off. That way it don't take any stress from mommy to try to get you off of these other ones. And so, but it didn't happen that way. He was good with letting those 2 go, but those other 3, Nah, he wasn't looking at letting them go. And then I did end up realizing that, I had all of this stored milk that, okay, he's already starting to wean himself. So he's probably never going to use this stored milk anymore. And so what I end up doing is I started trying to find a donor. And that process within itself was kind of, it was a little challenging because me personally, I enjoy taking advantage of natural things as far as preventatives, natural ways for preventatives when it comes to getting sick and things like that. So whether it be sea moss, whether it be elderberry, but these aren't things that the CDC or any doctors are actually studying to say whether they are beneficial or not, right? They're not taking out the time to do that. So when you tell them about it, they're not going to recommend it because they don't have any data. They don't have any information on it. Right. And so I'm sitting here locating different donors. And yes, there are ones out there that will pay you for your milk. So that's where I started. I was like, okay. And this is immediately when the shortage took place for the formula. And so I'm like, well, maybe I can help other mothers. And so what I did initially before looking at donors is I posted in different mother groups and women groups that I'm in, like, hey, if anyone needs any milk, let me know. I have plenty of breast milk available if you need it. I know that sounds pretty weird because I know if it was me personally, I probably wouldn't be open to just being like, oh yeah, I'll take your breast milk and give it to my child. So I get it. I never really got responses from it. And so again, that's when I end up looking at donors. And so with these donor facilities and organizations, some of them pay you. And so I was like, okay, cool. Let me try these out first. So problem is Ashley being Ashley, I'm like, yeah, I take preventatives such as elderberry to keep myself healthy and things like that. And they was like, oh, they went and looked up elderberry and they was like, sorry, Miss Lance, we can't use your milk because of this substance elderberry that you take. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Like, this can help these babies. But neither here nor there. Any of them that paid didn't want to move forward with it. So it's like, all right, cool, whatever. And so from that moment, I end up coming in contact with a few of them that do not pay. But at this point, I'm like, I would love to just be able to be a blessing to, again, a NICU baby or, a family that may be in need due to the shortage or whatever. So contacted them. And one of them ended up proceeding and got back with me pretty quickly. And so we're working together, trying to get all the documentation. You do have to end up getting blood work, which I understand. They want to make sure before they provide in these infants your milk that you don't have any STDs or anything crazy that can be passed along to them. So I did have to go get blood work done just to confirm that. But then after that was confirmed, they sent me a big old cooler and packed that milk up. It was very emotional. Very, very emotional the day that I took all of the milk out of the freezer and put them in the cooler to be picked up. I end up having 525 ounces that was donated. And again, to be able to be a blessing to other babies and infants that are in need. I was just grateful to be able to do that because, again, it took me back to my process of when we first got started, how challenging it was and how almost close I was to being like, I don't think I can do this. And so if that was the case, I would have loved to have been able to still provide him the nutrients from breast milk. So again, any way that I could help was just the forefront of my mind and being able to do it. All this milk being donated to other babies to help them keep them healthy. All this milk, this mama who was struggling. It was a challenge in the beginning, but now I'm able to bless other families. Grateful to be able to do so. Very, very emotional. I was very, very sad because I'm like, it just felt like a part of me, a part of something that I was used to was leaving. And we have all this now space in the freezer. And I'm like, oh, my milk is gone. And so again, just looking at the positive of it, definitely looking forward to it being helpful to others. But then he had started to, at 14 months, he had actually started again. He's at 3 nursings. And at 14 months, he kind of started going back and forth with the midday one. So I was like, okay, we're going to go ahead and try to wean this midday one first, because I don't want to take away his morning and night. I'm not about to do that. And so we did the midday. And again, some days he would be fine without it, but then other days, he just really, really wanted it. So that one, it started to be a little bit challenging, but then it got to a point where I was just very firm. And I would tell him like, no milk right now, baby. You'll get it during bedtime. And he understood, and he would still cry sometimes and everything. But then he finally started getting it. I think it took maybe like a week or so for it to click, like, okay, I'm not getting this milk no more. And then from there, I was like, okay, we got to start knocking out this morning one. He's at 15 months now. We end up taking a trip to Cancun. And during that time, I'm like, okay, I still want him to have the morning one. But right after we came back from that trip, I'm like, all right, we're going to have to go ahead and reduce this morning one. My body was just kind of telling me it's time to go ahead and start getting out of this process. And so I will say the morning one was the most challenging between the midday, the morning, and the night, the last 3. The morning was most challenging for both he and I. Like, he would wake up normally and be excited, and we had our little routine of him nursing, but he started to see that was no longer taking place. And he would cry, y'all. He would cry so hard. Screaming sometimes, and it would just hurt my heart, because he would tell me or his dad, like, milk, like, that's what he wants. And it's like, I want to be able to be there for my baby. And so what I had to do, because of how emotional it was for me, like, I even caught myself crying and things, and even my body wise is still producing, because when they cry, your body like triggers milk for some reason. And so I'm still, feeling myself getting engorged and things like that. And I'm, hurting there, and then hurting emotionally, because I want to be there for him. And I know that all I got to do is nurse him just to make things better, but I can't. And so what I end up doing is, to be able to clear my mind, I started back working out. I was like, I can't be up here with him. And I think it'll make it easier if he doesn't see me. And so I started to work back out. To work out again in our garage. And so I would get up before he gets up. I would go down there and I work out. And by the time I come back upstairs, I try to kind of remove myself as much as possible. I greet him, tell him good morning and everything. But then I go shower, but I keep my door closed. That way he doesn't see me anymore until I'm fully clothed again, just to not, pretty much entice him, or to, make him think like, oh, okay, maybe mommy's going to give me some milk today. I don't want to trick him or anything. And so that's another thing I did, is try to just clear my mind, work out, get myself together for the day. And it's benefiting me as well, because now, again, I'm getting back to a healthier me of keeping myself busy, not getting deep into my emotions as much, and just focus on, getting myself back into the shape that I'm comfortable with. And so eventually it took about 2 weeks. It took about maybe 2.5 weeks, but he's good now off of those morning feedings. And so most recently, like a week ago, I decided, all right, let's go ahead and do nights. And so it started off where dad was home with him anyways. And so for 2 nights, dad put him to bed, and he was like, oh yeah, he's fine, which that's always the case. Whenever he doesn't see me, he doesn't even really think about it. So that's kind of what made me realize, like, okay, we can go ahead and get you out of this process. You're only needing it because you see me. Right. And so with the nights, dad put him to sleep for 2 nights. And I really thought the nights were going to be more challenging because we had this great routine of nursing and singing and reading books and praying and putting them in the bed. And so I'm like, oh, this was a big major part where I would just kind of rub him and caress him and just get him mellow for the night. And so surprisingly, that's been the smoothest transition this night, because one thing I realized afterwards is he's tired anyways. And so what I did is I decided to keep up the same routine of what we're doing, but instead of nursing, we sing, we say prayers, we read a book, and I put him in the bed. Now, the first 2 nights, he was upset because he's like, wait, mommy, wait, what are we doing? I need my milk for the night. But after those 2 nights, he was good. And it's now to the point where he knows the process, and he's like, okay, he gets in his bed and he goes to sleep. So again, the biggest thing there is just when transitioning, try to keep the same routine as much as possible. I think that really helps the child to still appreciate it. Like, okay, we're not knocking out our routine, mom. You're just taking this one thing away, but you're still consoling me. You're still giving me that love and that comfort that I look forward to just without the milk. And so again, trying to follow those similar routines and also creating new ways for you to bond. That's one thing I thought about. I'm like, okay, this is now an open door for us to create even more new ways for us to enjoy each other. And so making, new memories, making more memories as he continues to grow, which I'm so excited and looking forward to. But yeah, that's my journey of nursing. It's the good, the challenging, and the sad. But one thing I can say is that now that we are over that process, it feels good. I feel like I got my body back for one. I was happy with sharing it when needed, but I will say it is a relief of getting it back. And, it's right now, my body's still adjusting as far as, still producing milk when he cries and things like that. But I do see as we continue this process, how it's just going to be good for, again, us to just do new things now. And so, I got to give you a quote. All right. So the quote of the day, and this is speaking to me as well. Motherhood is the greatest thing and the hardest thing. That's by Ricky Lake. And so there's so many things that we are going to go throughout our child's life that will be great. And then some that will also be hard, maybe hard to let go of something because of a new change taking place, a new memory that we have to create, or maybe our child is learning something new and, we're just so excited and welcoming and warming it. But whatever the case may be, just know it's going to be all right. Okay. So the biggest thing that I would say here is throughout this continual process, this continual journey of motherhood, being sure to give yourself grace. Give yourself grace throughout every new process in this motherhood journey, because you're doing a beautiful job, but you have to recognize that as well. You have to be light on yourself. All right. But then also another thing is, don't ever compare yourself to the next mama. All right. There's different journeys. There's going to be different outcomes. And so understand that. So again, this was me just speaking on my journey. And so yours may be totally different, but we are still both amazing moms. All right. So that is our episode for the day. I want to thank you all for tuning in. I want to remind you to continue to subscribe. Please like, follow, share the content, because you never know who needs to hear this and who this can help. Okay. And then also be sure to tune in to the next episode. We're going to be discussing the importance of trying to balance being a working mom. All right. It has its challenges, but balance is important. So we're going to talk about it. And so until next time, as always, please keep your head up because your little one is watching and admiring you. Continue to take care of yourself. And I look forward to seeing you next time on I'm the Mama Podcast. Later.